That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Beau Is Afraid, the highly anticipated third feature from Ari Aster that's being released courtesy of A24 on April 21st, 2023.
Third feature?
Yeah.
Hasn't he done more than 3 films?
Feature-length films.
Oh.
Because you've watched at least one of his shorts.
So, I really liked Hereditary and Midsommar.
I like them both as well. Quite a bit.
And I've seen his first thing, The Strange Thing About the Benjamins.
The Johnsons.
The Johnsons.
I don't know if that's the exact title. He had several shorts, including one called Beau that I haven't seen, so I'm not sure.
But a talented filmmaker.
Oh, more than talented. Nobody's making films like this or having the opportunity to make films like this.
You've seen this film twice.
Yes, and I would say that it's a film that should be seen more than once.
So, I would describe this movie, it's crazy as hell, but I would say it's like a crazy dream. How would you describe it?
A psychotic fever dream about guilt, but also, you can read into in many ways about being in a parallel or alternate reality, as the description of it is, but also kind of like how Midsommar really gets into what it feels like to be on a bad trip. This also feels like maybe what somebody on antipsychotics feels like.
You like this movie.
I did a lot.
I thought it was excellent. It's long as hell and crazy as hell, but there is a basic story that's actually quite basic. So, Joaquin Phoenix plays the character Beau. We meet him at a therapy session, and we find out that he has a plane ticket for the following day to visit his mother, and that's the source of a lot of anxiety. But he ends up not only missing his flight the following day, but he gets injured, and the injury causes him to be unconscious for 2 days, and when he wakes up, he calls his mom and finds out she's dead. So he makes his way to her house to go to the funeral. And when he gets there, he realizes that his mother faked her death basically as a test to see if she loves him as much as she loves him. And he ends up going on trial and found guilty for being a shitty son. And it would appear that he's sentenced to death. The end. But it's so much more than that.
It is so much more than that. I think I was so antsy watching it the first time in I think it's disturbing, disorienting. There are quite a few scenes I had emotional reactions to. That I was almost repelled by it a bit. But watching it a second time, I feel like there was a lot more that I caught, albeit probably not everything. But his name is Beau Wassermann, and Wasser means water.
Oh. I had told myself I'm not going to take notes, and I ended up still taking a page full of notes. But since it's all over the place, we should probably structure this. So first, can you talk about the beginning and the end of the film?
Well, Mother Mona is a name that's taken from the Madonna figure. So the Virgin Mary, and there's a lot of allusions and symbolism going on. But the beginning is a birth scene, not unlike kind of how Inarritu's Bardo opened similarly with the birth scene last year, where we see this from the baby's perspective, Beau coming into the world, and what you hear is Mona basically moaning and screaming and having a lot of anxiety about her kid not making noise.
I think like overreacting.
Overreacting, yes.
In the end, the trial is set in like an aquatic coliseum. And Beau is in a boat. We can get to how he gets there, but he's in a boat. And as he's being tried, it's clear that it's obvious that he's a shitty son, according to his mother.
And it's a kangaroo court, for sure.
And the boat he's on, like there's like an explosion and the boat capsizes. So I guess I feel, only because you had said this to me, I don't know that I would have picked it up immediately, but that it's kind of like him going back into the womb, maybe?
Yes, and the water symbolism also fits with that to me, and he's ended his life cycle kind of. In that scene, it also reminded me a bit of the Powell and Pressburger film, A Matter of Life and Death, or something like Defending Your Life, where he's literally. This film felt like Franz Kafka writing the Odyssey.
Well, let's just go through these notes. So his therapist is played by an actor I recognize.
Stephen McKinley Henderson, yeah.
Who I thought I would love for him to be my therapist, But then we get to the end, and then you realize we don't want his ass. But anyway, his therapist seems to be handling Beau very well, and ultimately recommends a new psych med for him. And it's made very clear, like, you have to take this medication with water. So we put a pin in that. But Beau lives in a city, which was kind of depressing to watch because it's supposed to seem like, how would you describe it?
Like a dystopia.
Dystopia.
Like it's utter chaos is going on in the streets, but it doesn't actually feel too far from what parts of downtown LA feel like.
Yeah, I was
today.
like, it feels like downtown LA, like right now. But Beau lives in a building, and it's very clear that he has a lot of anxiety. He's paranoid, but what we're seeing is not reality. It feels like we're in an alternate universe, or maybe it's all in his head. But I thought a few funny things. When we get into his building, the elevator that he has to get on
is sparking.
is literally like a carriage to hell. And then we're told that there are notices on people's doors saying that a brown recluse spider
is loose in the building.
And we get the spider a few times throughout the film, which I thought was an interesting symbol. But Beau is stressed out immediately because him having to walk to his building requires he passes this crazy person who he's afraid of. He gets in the building, he takes his new medication, but the water in the building is out. So he's freaking out, like, I have to take water with this medication. So he runs across the street, gets water, but he doesn't. That exchange is weird, and while he's trying to manage that, someone has stolen his house keys.
Just as he's about to leave to the airport that he wakes up late for because of shenanigans the night before.
And probably the medication knocked his ass out. But I thought a really good scene is, because the street is filled with all kinds of characters. And because Beau doesn't have his key, he has to prop his building door open. And then he's delayed at the convenience store because he doesn't have exact change for the water. And all of the people on the streets enter his building. I thought that was such a good
It's
scene.
so good because it's you can really relate to how that probably feels. And there's low-key Clockwork Orange level ultraviolence going on in the street at all times.
And the attention to detail is so great. But Beau ends up spending the night outside because he's afraid to go into his apartment because all these people have entered his apartment and they're tearing it up. But he goes into the apartment the next day. He is taking a bath, and I thought a really creepy scene is because we see him get in the bath and he's trying to decompress, and he looks up and there's a man dangling from the ceiling that drops down into the water. And so then Beau is freaking out. He's naked and he runs out into the street. And we're told something there are a lot of comedic moments in this film. One of the ones that made me laugh out loud initially is there's a news story about the birthday stab man.
And it's described as a circumcised Caucasian male.
Which is basically this circumcised Caucasian male who's in his birthday suit. So he's nude and he's running around stabbing people. So Beau runs out into the street naked because he's freaked out that this person fell into his tub. And of course the police think he's the birthday stab man. But then the birthday stab man is actually on the street and attacks Beau after Beau's been hit by a car. So the person who hits Beau...
Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane, Grace and Roger.
We find out that Nathan Lane's character is a surgeon. So they take his ass home instead of to the hospital.
Kind of like in Misery.
Yes. And Nathan Lane's character sews him up and they put him in a room and say, we're going to take care of you until you're healed. But when Beau wakes up and realizes 2 days have passed, that's when he calls his mom, and a UPS driver picks up, played by...
You show him, you see him in a news story, Bill Hader.
I did not catch that, and he explains I think your mom's dead, because I see a decapitated woman here, and then Bill Hader checks her purse and confirms that it is his mother. So of course... Beau is distraught, but Nathan Lane is I can take you home, but you need to rest. You're still... You can't get on a plane because your sutures will burst. But then Beau gets a call from, a family lawyer.
He makes a phone call finally to Richard Kind, who he calls the doctor, and he's like, I'm not your doctor, I'm the family lawyer.
And the lawyer explains, because of their Jewish faith, we cannot bury your mom until your bum ass shows up. So get yourself together and get to her house, because literally her body is sitting on ice and we cannot bury her until you're there. And it's so disrespectful.
But what's also notable about this family that he ends up they're trying to adopt him because they are missing a son that died in action in Caracas.
Then another creepy part of the film is the dead son who was in the military. His military buddy named Jeeves also lives with them.
Did you recognize him?
No.
That was Denis Ménochet, who you just saw as Peter von Kant.
That was him? Oh, funny.
He doesn't really have any dialogue.
You know what's funny about Peter von Kant is I felt like that character, it was bad casting because I feel like Peter von Kant's supposed to be like undesirable, but that actor is kind of handsome, so it didn't work for me. But anyway, Jeeves is suffering from PTSD. He's ultra violent, so they're trying to manage that. But Nathan Lane and his wife have a daughter. I think her name is Jody.
Toni.
Toni? Mm-hmm. She made me so uncomfortable.
Yes, played by Kylie Rogers. Yes.
Oh my God, she made me so uncomfortable.
Because this is not. It's another mother-son relationship that's been disrupted, and she's the daughter that's the outsider because it's clear they favored their dead son, and so she's got all kinds of issues.
Really? Yeah, and
because they stick him in her bed.
Yeah, well, like she still lives in the house, and Beau is sleeping in her bed while she'll sleep on the couch, so she's mad.
But meanwhile, no one can use Nathan's room and must lay undisturbed.
But Nathan Lane's character, he agrees to take. Beau is like, I have to get to my mom's house, and he's like, well, I guess I can take you tonight, but it'd be better if I can take you in the morning. And Beau's, and that's the important plot point. And Beau's like, okay, take me in the morning, but then he can't because he has to do surgery. So the daughter agrees to take him, but then she absconds with Beau with a girlfriend, another teenage girl, and they were so vile. They make Beau do drugs and record him, and they ultimately never take him. They just end up back at the house. And when he's before they even get in the van to go on the drive, Beau vomits on the daughter's laptop.
He gets on her laptop, and that's where we first see Parker Posey as Elaine, who is the grown-up version of his childhood sweetheart. He's a virgin. Because we get flashbacks in between this cruise that he went on with his mother, who as a young woman is played by Zoe Lister-Jones, and him meeting the character of Elaine, who asked him to save himself for her, and he has. So when he sees her, his first reaction is to vomit.
And another good scene is getting a sense of who Elaine is as a young girl, because they're on the cruise ship. Someone dies on the cruise, and the way Beau meets her is that she's banging on everyone's door in the cruise ship, like, there's a dead man in the pool. I thought that was such a good scene.
And what's also creepy is the Polaroid that he's kept of her, where he has it in writing. He says that he'd wait for her, is a picture of her next to that dead man in the pool.
So everything culminates at Nathan Lane's house because the daughter is crazy as hell.
Everybody's on medication in this.
Everyone's medicated, and she convinces Beau to go into Nathan's room, the dead son, and then she starts defacing it.
She wants to paint the walls.
And then she wants to do a murder-suicide, so she's trying to convince Beau to drink paint, but he won't. So she drinks a bunch of paint and dies. And when the mom shows up, she thinks Nathan is responsible. So then Nathan has to flee. And this is this movie is so out of control.
It is.
I loved it, but it's out of control because then the middle portion of the film is Beau leaving this house. The middle hour, Beau leaves from the house and he ends up running into a woman who's part of this group called the Orphans of the Forest.
Yeah, they're a traveling theater troupe. That's Haley Squires, who we reviewed in Ben Wheatley's In the Earth. She's a really good performance in I, Daniel Blake. But her character name is Penelope, which is of course a reference to Homer's The Odyssey. That's the wife that Odysseus is trying to go home to. And
her character's pregnant in this film. But in this middle hour, we get a 25-minute sequence of this play being put on. So when you watch the trailer and you see the weird cartoonish visuals, that's this play. And basically what this play is Beau's dream life, where he met a woman he fell in love with, had 3 sons, but then loses them in a flood and spends the rest of his life finding them. And I thought that was very powerful.
And it's very meta because the play that's being told, we learn that it's all in his head. He's projected himself into this scenario that's not actually the play that's
Right.
going on. And we see him as an old man reuniting with his sons on the stage of this very same play, the oldest son played by Michael Gandolfini. And that was one of the moments where I felt it's very unsettling and
Yes.
emotional in a way that is hard to calibrate.
Yeah, and it ends with a quote that really hit me hard
Yeah.
because someone says, "You're so lost in your own selfishness, no one could find you."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, God damn. And it reminded me, because this film does have a lot of humor, but it reminded me of the TV show Ab Fab when Eddie's talking about her daughter Safi, and she says, when someone deliberately overeducated themselves out of the possibility of useful employment. And that's kind of what I think this story is about, like how Beau's mom feels about him.
Mm-hmm.
That he's so delicate, like she did the best she could to love him, sacrifice so much, and then he turns into this sniveling, like,
He's useless. He's kind of
infant.
the epitome of a flaccid man.
Yes.
If we're referencing Meryl in Death Becomes Her. This sequence where with this really the sound design is so good because it's like a trance you're put in as we're watching, and the visuals are great. It reminded me of like Salvador Dali trying to tell the Christ story or the Book of Job kind of, because this felt like what I wanted the last few versions of Pinocchio to feel like, but Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, like it has that level of finesse.
I agree. So at this point, we realized that, because I thought I had this movie figured out. Like the first 2 hours, I'm like, oh, Beau Is Afraid. It's about a guy who is crippled by his own anxiety. And so we're seeing him go through life just incapable of achieving anything. But then I realized, oh no, it's about how his mother and all her sort of manipulations and really created this sniveling example of like a human that we see in front of us. And then Patti LuPone.
So Patti LuPone is the adult Mona, and in the flashbacks, she's interchangeable often with Zoe Lister-Jones.
I thought that was really well done.
Because that's where we also learn she convinced her son that he was going to die as soon as he had sex, kind of like but with spiders and praying man.
Well, not even sex. I got the sense that if he ejaculates, he will die, because she tells him that that's how your father died. Like when you were conceived and your daughter and your dad ejaculated in me, he died. And that's how his dad died and his grandfather died. So it would seem that Beau has never even ejaculated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we get to his mom's house.
Who we learn created a super business. She's basically like Jeff Bezos.
It's really funny because they keep talking about this like entrepreneur in the super business, and she's super rich, but we never really understand what she did. We do see, we get like a little scene where we see all of her accomplishments, but it just sounds like she did everything. Real estate, retail, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals.
But it looks like maybe her son was involved in at least the advertising, maybe the experiment, maybe testing out some of those.
Well, it's also not clear when he sort of disconnected himself, because his mom is super rich and super like obsessed with him, but Beau lives in like squalor. So something happened where it's like he tried to disconnect, but we don't get the sense of how long it's been. But this is when Parker Posey comes in, because Beau shows up to the funeral late, so it's already over. But the funeral was recorded so that we, the audience, and Beau can hear and see it.
And which castigates him. Like Beau Beau couldn't be bothered to make it. And the song selections in this section of the film are great. There's a song by Brett called "Everything I Own," which I thought was perfect because it's all about taking someone's love for granted and losing them. Shirley Bassey does a fantastic cover of that. And then that's followed by Nina Simone's "Isn't It a Pity?" Which there's a line in that song like how we take each other's love without thinking.
Well, so Beau's sort of like in the house despondent when all of a sudden someone walks in like, hello, hello. And it's Parker Posey, the grown-up Elaine, the girl from the cruise ship. And she's like, oh shit, I thought the funeral was at 8 p.m., not 8 a.m. So here's some flowers. I guess I'll call an Uber. And then Beau follows her outside and is like, Elaine, I'm Beau. And she's like, no way. And immediately she wants to have sex with him. Mm-hmm. So they go to Beau's mother's room.
She's an employee of Mona's, by the way.
And there are so many good scenes in this movie, but Parker Posey in this movie and this sex scene is
Oh, this is cult status written all over it.
Yeah, it's amazing because she straps a condom on his ass and starts riding him. And of course, he's never ejaculated before. So he doesn't even last like 10 strokes before it's all over. And then she's like, well, I got to keep going because I need to finish. And then all of a sudden we realize that she has died from ejaculating.
Yes, she's frozen. She's become stiff.
And then who pops up? Patti LuPone. She's like, you thought I was dead, fool? No, I was testing your ass. You ain't shit. And then she lists off all the reasons why. Like, look, you're having sex with some bitch in my bed when you think I'm dead? And then she just lists off everything. Like, yeah.
Then Parker puts a song on while they're having sex, which is also notable.
It's very important. And it's very funny because she puts on Mariah Carey's Always Be My Baby. And then right when she like lets him penetrate her, she's like, oh, let me restart the song. And he doesn't even last like the first verse.
And then you see a shot of his testicles.
Yes, that's important because in the beginning, when Beau runs out of his apartment nude and they think he's the birthday stab man, we do get a glimpse of his genitals. And I was like, oh God, his testicles look so distended.
And Nathan Lane talks
and
about it.
And then Nathan Lane, the surgeon's like, hey, just so you know, like your sac is abnormally large. We should probably look into that. And then we find...
So when he ejaculates, Parker's like, I think you busted through that bag. But the other thing is, there's such...
Well, because the gag is that his scrotum
Yes.
is distended because he's never ejaculated.
But when she arrives, the tone changes in a way that's also really kind of touching, and they have a nice... Because you're not looking at this man in a sexual way at all in this film, and then all of a sudden, there's kind of this brief sweetness to it.
Well, yes, because when he tells her, I waited for you, my little one feeling got a little tingly. Yeah.
He's like, I have it in writing. And she warmed up to it right away. But
I think the real star of this movie is Patti LuPone.
Oh my God.
And we were going to talk about it, but I feel like people would compare this to Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I do think it's comparable because we have like mother-child relationship, kind of like a fever dream. Both are pretty dark, but I think, you know, if Everything Everywhere is like a dream, I think this is like a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's definitely more dark. But if Jamie Lee can win for Best Supporting, I feel like Patti LuPone should win for Best Supporting.
Patti LuPone, I mean, she's scary.
When her ass gets started and she starts letting her son know what's what, I was like, oh my God.
Because I didn't mind all the kind of the extended sequences of she's just stomping around this house.
When she explains to him, well, first she goes, well, he's like, I know that, like, I knew you weren't dead. And she's like, how did you know? And he's like, well, I recognize the birthmark in the casket because we see the body. And he's like, that was our housekeeper when I was a kid, Marta. Patti LuPone paid her housekeeper to be decapitated and pretend to be her in the casket.
Not only that, she says she never had to pay Marta. She volunteered her service.
Oh, she said Marta volunteered, and then Beau's like, well, how much did you pay her? Enough so her entire family could quit working and never have to work again. Like, this lady was very serious.
Oh, she's so mad. And then I love this.
Patti is very mad.
I love the scene where she recounts where he gave her the same gift 2 years in a row.
Oh my God.
Which was the Bette Midler soundtrack for The Boys.
And then when Patti is talking about her mom, and then we the camera pans over to a portrait of Patti's mom, Beau's grandma, who looks like Betty Davis.
As the Virgin Queen, yeah.
Like if Betty Davis were on Gullah Gullah Island.
Oh my God. It's so ugly.
It's ugly. But then the real gag is all of a sudden, guess who pops out of the bathroom? Beau's therapist. Mm-hmm. And then Patti LuPone starts playing over the like sound system in the house, Beau's therapy sessions. So she's been in cahoots with the therapist. She probably paid his ass. And she's been listening to all of Beau's tapes. And that's when we realized, like, Beau blames his mom for all of his issues.
Well, also, it's notable that since he believes his father died upon ejaculation in his mother, he's never known his father, and that's something that's haunted him. He's always wanted to know.
So then guess what his mom does? She's like, oh, you want to know the truth? Bring your ass over here. And we find out that Beau's recurring dream is that he's like in a bathtub, and there are like two versions of himself. And so he's watching his other version get dragged into an attic.
The Bray version. And also kind of the one time that he made a choice, right?
And his mom goes, oh, that dream? That's not a dream. I used to lock your ass in the attic.
She's
so
like,
get your ass up there.
No, she's like, that wasn't a dream, stupid. That was a memory.
And then we find out that Beau's dad is locked in the attic along with like a monster version of his penis.
That has claws and teeth and is screaming his name. It is very much Zulawski's possession.
And then Jeeves, the veteran from Nathan Lane's house, was instructed to kill Beau. So he's been following him. So then Jeeves shows up and attacks the giant penis, but the penis kills Jeeves.
Stabbing the scrotum.
And then Beau is able to get back downstairs. And then Patti LuPone starts railing into him again, and he strangles her. But he doesn't kill her. He just leaves the house, jumps on a boat, and then rides off into like the lake or the river. But then he ends up in like a cave, which turns into that aquatic coliseum. And then we're at the end where he's being put on trial. This movie is like, I think if you're a child, which we all are, if you have a parent, which we all do, if you are a parent, I feel like you can relate. You just have to get over the fact that it's not meant to be reality. I feel like people who didn't like Everything Everywhere All at Once were being, you just gotta let the shit wash over you.
You're being too literal. This is art. What art house cinema should be: challenging, innovative, and you're supposed to. When you leave a theater, if it's art, you are contemplating it afterwards.
But I'm not the smartest person, and I just think like you just gotta let it wash over you, and then you can feel what's happening. Like this is a story about a man who has a lot of guilt over and a lot of trauma related to his mom, and then his mom feeling like I gave up everything for you to raise you the best I can, and you ain't shit. That's basically what it's about. And then when you think like as a human, I think we all would agree that when we think about a loving relationship, like if you look up loving relationship in the dictionary, there would be a picture of a mother with her child. That's like the epitome.
Well, that's the whole symbol of he for her the trip home. He buys that little statue of the Virgin Mary. What I would took to be the Virgin Mary, or Mary Magdalene, or his Christ's mother, the Virgin Mary, and the baby,
right?
Which she also has is the same replica of outside her house.
Yes, but I think we can also, many of us can relate to that. The most loving relationship of all can be the most toxic relationship. So I thought this film, because it gets you like 2/3 of the way through without realizing that, and then it's like, oh my god. So I felt very connected to the story. It took me on a ride. We watched it yesterday, and my allergies were terrible, so I was miserable. And I still was able to be very connected. So I know it's a good movie. And I don't know. We were talking, and I felt like, I know people are going to be mad if I say this, but I feel like I've known a lot of people who, when I get to know them, I think like, God, your parents must be so disappointed in you. And that's a real thing. Like, if I were a parent and I put my all into this kid, and then they end up just being like this
disappointing,
like,
and also
ingrate,
and as she says, just rejected me.
And is telling everyone, like, I'm the reason why they can't have a healthy relationship. I'm the reason this and that. I would be mad too, of course, being selfish and not thinking that I could have contributed to any of it. But that's the beauty of this story, is the complexity of that sort of relationship. I'm not trying to minimize that this person had legitimate mental health issues, but I think that sort of relationship is very complicated. And this film does a really good job of executing that balance. And in the end, I would give this film 4 out of 5. The reason I wouldn't give it 5 is because I did feel like it felt a little long, because Beau is a difficult character to sit with.
He is.
Because he's so pathetic. But I feel like that was necessary, so that in the end, when he's on trial and it would seem that his mother kind of has a valid point, it's like, well, yeah, because he's just pitiful, like beyond just any sort of emotional, like legitimate issues.
I mean, and Ari Aster seems to really prize these family units, these relationships that are perverted by dysfunction.
Yeah.
Like considerable dysfunction. And this is in keeping with that, but this is also the first time we've seen him with a male lead that we're focusing on intensely. And I don't know if that has a difference either, but I think Joaquin's performance is really good. But yeah, it's hard to stay with him so long, but that's part of the frustration, is these things just keep happening to him. And at one point he is not helping himself, but some of these situations are really helpless. It is a nightmare.
That's true, yes.
Because when we get to the part where he is unsure if the news of his mother's death is a memory or whatever, and Amy Ryan is comforting him and he's crying. Like, I also had a reaction to that. It reminded me of the end of Jacob's Ladder, the original with Tim Robbins, where he wakes up and is kind of unsure. I don't know. I just found that very resonant.
Yeah.
And the bodies lying around. There's just bodies in the streets in the city he's living in. It's very much Liliana Cavani's debut, The Year of the Cannibals. That movie does that too, where there's a world where there's just these bodies lying around in the street.
Parker Posey's great. Patti LuPone gives an amazing performance. I think Joaquin Phoenix does a really, really good job. I could see him being nominated for an Academy Award.
Parker, I love Parker Posey.
She looks great.
She looks fantastic. The name Elaine actually means sun ray, or kind of like a ray of light.
What would you give this film?
4 out of 5. I think it's excellent.
I thought it was excellent.
It was shot by Pavel Pogorzelski, who also shot Hereditary, Midsummer, and Mona
looks great.
Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon.
All the little details.
The Haxon Cloak, who also did the score for Midsummer. The score, the sound design. I mean, it's just, this is a difficult film. This definitely probably couldn't have been financed as his first film. I think he had to have that trajectory that Ari Aster has had to make this film, but
I would recommend you need to be well rested, have your snacks ready, and just be ready to watch some crazy shit. But I will definitely watch it again.
Same.
Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button, listen to our podcast. Bye.